Hello, everybody. I'm excited to walk you through some Tableau visualizations today. As Richie said, I'm a Salesforce developer here at DataCamp. I've been here a couple years, and for those who don't know, Salesforce is one of the um, key systems that tracks our business-to-business data. So moving to Tableau and working on these visualizations is definitely close to some of the stuff I work with. Um, so I believe we're going to shut off cameras just to save bandwidth, but nice to meet you all, and let's dive into it. So, um, for our agenda today, we're going to be looking at a couple of data sets on cancer cases and when people are diagnosed, what stage they're diagnosed at, and the cost for what happens by stage. And the idea behind this is to maybe determine what sort of public policy, what see trends advise towards policy that could, help prevent, help lower costs, help know when and how to screen for cancers and just improve uh, the whole healthcare system behind cancer treatment and diagnosis. So that's the overall arching motivation behind this, but we'll get in and define a few key questions that we can use Tableau to help us answer. So first, I'll share a little bit more info on the data. We'll define these key questions, and then we'll jump into Tableau. Hopefully, everyone's able to download the data in Tableau. We'll build our visualizations and move on to our question and answer session. So first, let's take a look at our data. We're going to be working with, and before we look at our actual sheets, I wanted to cover a few key definitions that are really essential for the data we're looking at. So both of our files, you'll see, have cancer broken up by different stages. So when cancer is diagnosed, a stage is determined between 0 and 4, and 4 being the worst, 0 being worst as in most progressed disease, and 0 being the least progression. So 0 here is defined as abnormal cells are present but have not spread to nearby tissue, and in some cases may be a precursor to cancer, but not an actual cancer. Now, stage 1, 2, and 3 share a definition. Cancer is present. The severity is then graded between 1, 2, and 3 based off of factors such as the size of tumor and the spread into nearby tissue. And finally, stage 4 is where cancer is spread to distant parts of the body. So you'll see there is some stage question mark in our data, and these are just diagnoses with unknown stage in our data, so we may not be able to gather a ton of info from those, but it does happen that the stage is not known or determined for some of these diagnoses. All right, moving on. We will look to answer some key questions about this data in Tableau, and I've written these out here. So first we can try and figure out what types of cancer are most prevalent. Then we can look at what stage do most diagnoses happen, and then we'll pull in our cost data and try and determine what is the cost of breast cancer treatment depending on stage. And finally, we'll try and pull it all together, combine our cancer, the count of cancer diagnoses in California with the cost per treatment, and try and answer this last question: what was the total cost for breast cancer treatment in California from 2004 to 2012? And I'll cover why we're working on California for those dates. So moving on. Let's just take a look at our data in Excel. I have it open up here. We have two sources here. First being these counts by stage. So we see we have 5 different types of cancer: breast, colon, rectum, lung, and prostate. And then it's broken up by stage. So we have 8,200 instances of colon cancer diagnosed at stage 0. And one thing I want to note about this particular data set is that it's only for California from the years 2004 to 2012. So that's why we're getting into that that question where we're going at the very end, determine the cost for all of these by stage for California. And then moving over to our second source, we have again broken up by stage, but here we're looking at the cost, and this is just for breast cancer. I'd like to highlight, we only have this data for breast cancer. So this would be breast cancer stage 0. Per case, the cost is going to be about $60,000 for 0 to 12 months, and around $18,000 for 12 to 24 months. So these are our 2 data sets we're going to be pulling in and visualizing in Tableau. All right, so hopefully everyone has Tableau Public downloaded and installed. So let's get it up and running, and let's dive in. So let's open up Tableau. All right, so now we have Tableau open. Let's load our first data set. First file that we're going to look at is going to be the count of our cancer diagnoses. So since we're working with Excel files today, let's just choose Excel file. And we're going to first look at the count, and we'll get to the cost later. So let's load this file, click open. And we see Tableau has pulled in our data for us and is giving us a nice preview here for broken up into our rows and columns that we expect. Everything looks good. The column names and row names are as expected. So we've successfully loaded our data. Let's pull it into our worksheet then. So we can just hop over to our worksheet here. And to easier keep track of what our questions and tie everything back together, our first question just as a reminder, our first question we wanted to answer is, what types of cancer are most prevalent? So we can rename our sheet to that. And next, since we're going to be answering multiple questions, we're gonna have multiple worksheets open. Let's get ahead of it and rename our worksheet down here at the bottom to cancer prevalence. Perfect. So now that we've named our sheets, we could jump in straight into the visualization, but let's just take a look at how we can make sure our data, verify our data looks good here in our worksheet. So we're going to start with a simple table, and to do that, I'm going to drag measure names to our columns section, and then stage name to our rows, and then measure values to text here. And now we have essentially what we had in Excel. We have our table. Again, when we loaded our data source, we saw a preview of this. This is just verifying to us that we can, in fact, pull our data onto the worksheet. Everything's working right. You'll see this count of cancer diagnoses here. This
Sorry
is
to interrupt, Connor. Is it just getting some questions from the audience? Is it possible to maximize Tableau Public and increase the text size just for people's eyesight?
Yes, I can maximize. Let me try to.
Don't know whether Command Plus will increase the size of the text.
It did not, unfortunately.
Ah,
Um, Sorry, bear with me one sec. I'll see if I can increase the size of the text.
oh, I think it has to be done in Mac OS system settings rather than Tableau itself.
Oh,
So we should have rehearsed this.
here, yeah, I can change my resolution actually. Give me 1 second, everybody. I'll just update my screen resolution to, I think I'm on a high-res monitor. That's probably creating some issues.
Just to jump in, I think that this is a D. I think that people can also use the Zoom function at the top of their GoToWebinar preview screen, and they can zoom in into your screen. So that's also an option.
Does that work better for anybody? Is that
Yeah, it should be fine actually. Sorry, let's continue.
Okay, perfect. So hopefully I changed the resolution on the screen. Hopefully that helps. All right, perfect. So as of now, we've just basically loaded in exactly what we had in Excel, but we want to do more than that. Say we might be interested in seeing the total number of cases across all types of cancer, not just broken up between breast, colon, etc. So what we can do for that is create a calculated field. So I'm just going to go up to this caret right here and create a calculated field. And we're just going to call this total cases. And this will be easy enough. We just want to add up the sum, get the sum of all of these together. So we can drag them on. And we check that our calculation is valid. It is. We can save our field. And now we have this total cases field, and we can see it's added to our table. And for each stage, we can see the total cases now. So pretty easy to do a quick calculation like that in Tableau. Again, this is still something we could have done in Excel, but it's very easy to do here, and we might want to pull this in later and take a look at this data. And it allows us to pull it into a visualization very easily. So now that we have this table, we verified our data, let's actually use where Tableau shines and create a visualization so we can hopefully see and better understand our data and draw easier conclusions from it. So it's going to be much easier to tell going back to our question, what types of cancer are most prevalent once we set up a graph. So let's clear our sheet. We don't need this table. And start creating a bar graph. So to do this, let's take our measure names, drag them to columns, and then measure values over here to rows. And you'll see Tableau has smartly created a bar graph just for us. And this is getting towards what we're looking for. Again, we have this field here, count of cancer diagnoses. Let's just drag that off. Don't need that. And though this was cool that we could create this calculated field, for total cases, this isn't necessarily what we're trying to answer. We're trying to look at prevalence, so we're just really comparing the individual types. So we can also drag that off. All right, so now we're getting there. one thing you always want to do in your Tableau graphs is make sure it's very clear what all the scales and such are. So right here, we just have a value on our axis. Let's rename this to something more clear. Let's call this total cases. Perfect. So now we have a graph. You can see immediately that breast cancer is the highest, but I think we can improve this a little bit more. So if you've noticed, we haven't added stage or incorporated a stage in any way to this. So let's play around with some ways of doing that. What we can do is divide up these bars by stage. So let's drag stage name to color. And here we go. Now we have separate sections for the stage name, and in the totals, you have it broken up by stage, which is nice, but not perfectly clear to read. So let's also, without our over here, we have our legend over here, but it's not perfectly clear. Let's increase the clarity by dragging stage name to label. Cool. Now that we have these labeled, we can improve it even further. Say we want these to say stage 1 and 2, stage 0, stage 3, stage 4, just so it's like immediately clear what these stand for. We can go into our label, we can edit the text. Let's just call it stage and add a space there. Cool. So now we have our graph set up. It's colorful, but it looks a little busy with all these labels. We can, and we have all of this unused space over here. So let's spread out our graph. Let's make it take up the entire width. Up here, we can select entire view. And there we go. And the last thing we're going to do to improve this is sort these bars to so we can better see and better visualize the prevalence of cancer. So what we can do here is just this button up here, sort measure names, ascending by measure values. And there we go. So it's very clear to us here that we have the highest prevalence of cancer is breast cancer, and then prostate is second, lung, colon, and rectum. So there we go. We have created a pretty interesting visualization. We can see the stage breakdowns, but most importantly, we've answered our question, what types of cancer are most prevalent? Very clearly, you can just look at this and know the answer. But moving on towards our second question, we're also interested in these individual stages and the prevalence of these stages, and knowing what stage the diagnoses happen. So you can kind of see on here that breast cancer, for example, stage 1 and 2 is the vast majority. But looking at just at this graph here, lung cancer, for example, you have to go onto the graph and hover to try and differentiate between 1 and 2 and 3. So if we really want to dive into like this question, what stage in most diagnoses happen, and visualize it, we can improve this graph. So to do that, let's do it in another worksheet because we want to keep this one. It answers one of our key questions. Let's go down here and duplicate our sheet. All right, so now we have a duplicated sheet. We're going to be answering the question. I'll add it in here. What stage do most diagnoses happen? Perfect. And then let's get ahead of renaming our tab, rename here to cancer stage. I forgot an S there, just fix the spelling. Cool. So our goal here is to better visualize what stages, what the actual stage does a diagnosis happen. Third time's the charm. Perfect. So to do that, let's remove our stage name from our marks and add it to columns. So we want to better visualize the stage name. And the easiest way to do that will be to just add it to columns here. So now we have it broken up on our columns as well. So we have at the top each type of cancer, and then the stages at which those get diagnosed are clear. So to get back to our question, what stage do most diagnoses happen? We can see stage 1 and 2 is generally the first, the most diagnosed stage, while 0 for breast cancer is very common. But the standout here, if we want to take, we'll easily notice that stage 4 for lung cancer is by far the most common stage it's diagnosed, where for other cancers that's just far from the norm. And again, this is just by creating the simple visualization, we've been able to see an interesting trend in the data, and an interesting deviation from the trend in the case of lung cancer. So thinking about why this might be, prostate cancer, colon cancer, all of these cancers, breast cancer, are regularly screened for in the United States. This is US data. There are routine screenings. And for example, breast cancer is one of the most screened for cancers, and it seems like it's very often caught in stage 0, whereas for lung cancer, unfortunately, it seems these instances of lung cancer are not getting caught early on. They're getting caught later on as the disease progresses. So we've successfully answered both of our questions here. What stage do most diagnoses happen? And the prevalence, what types of cancer are most prevalent. But it would be useful to bring this all together on a central place so we can keep track of our questions and the answers against them. The best way for us to do that is going to be creating a dashboard. So let's go ahead and do that. And again, here on this dashboard, you'll see this white area is not spreading across our whole screen. We can fix that rather than having this predefined range. Let's change it to automatic. Now we can use our whole screen to drop our sheets. And for our central place for questions, let's drag both of our sheets onto our dashboard. Cool. So now we have answered our first 2 questions, created a dashboard so we can go back and easily see our answers to both. Yep, there we go. So before we move on to our answering our third question, and what we'll do next is pull in cost data, pull in our cost data set. I wanted to pause for a second and see if there are any immediate questions, any issues. Just give a few minutes before we move on.
So we've just got some questions about the data source. So some people didn't see some people arrived late, didn't see where the data had come from. So can you just go back to the link to the data sets so they can download the files and how you
Sure.
brought it into Tableau?
Sure. So the data is available in I think we can post the link again in the chat. It's going to be in this Google Drive I've set up for us. So there's these 2 Excel files. You should be able to download each of those to your local machine and then load them into Tableau. So once you have them downloaded, I'll give everyone a second just as you're following along. So once we have these downloaded, we'll switch back over to Tableau. And you can, once you have it open, you'll be in this data sources screen. And you'll see this window here. And you'll just be able to click Microsoft Excel and then choose the file you were loading. And we're working first with breast cancer cost, we're working first with Cancer Diagnoses California 2004 to 2012. And that's what we've loaded so far. We'll get into loading the second one in a second. So you'll be able to follow along for that as well. But yeah, this is the first one we've pulled in.
All right, we've got 2 more audience questions. If anyone else has any questions, please do add them to the chat now. So there's one, just a reminder on what the question mark stage means.
Question mark stage, yes. So you'll see that on here. It's interesting. In our data, there were basically looking at, let's look at this. So this is lung cancer. There were 20,000 question mark cases right here. So essentially what these are defined as is someone was diagnosed with lung cancer, but the stage couldn't be precisely determined and they were not put into one of these categories. So it's kind of, it's a question mark. We're not sure exactly what category they'd be best fit in. So you can draw some interesting conclusions from the size of this as well. For example, it looks like the ratio of question mark is much lower for colon cancer, but higher for things like lung cancer. So maybe it's harder to actually determine a stage for these types of cancer, things like that.
All right, and there's a couple of people asking, could you show again how you renamed the, in the first graph, how you renamed the stage titles to include the word stage?
Yep, perfect, of course. Yeah, so we just wanted to include stage here just to make it a little clearer, maybe for someone who doesn't know the data as well as us who are building this. So what we did to get the stage titles onto these bars was just drag stage name here to the label, but that only gave us the question mark and it didn't give us the first part. So what we were able to do is then click on this label and then modify the text to whatever we want here. So we could just go in here and I just typed the word stage here. So we can just, even though I put test here, and click apply, it adds it in. And you'll see this stage name in carats is just the pulling in the actual value from the field. And this is our custom text. We'll apply again, there we go. And then if we really wanted to spice it up, we could change things such as the font, color, things like that, but we'll leave it as is for now.
Nice, okay. And so before we move on, there's a couple of questions around color. So in the first graph, you got different colors for stages, but then there's a sort of, it's just blue in the second sheet. So just why is that? And can you replicate the color scheme from one to the other?
Yeah, so for this one, we set up this color scheme just to really make it pop, like the difference between the stages in these bars. Here we're not really breaking it up as much, but the blue does look a bit boring. So we could replicate a bit of color here, and honestly, let's do it. And so we can just follow through and see what it could look like in this different format graph. So what I would be able to do here is we're So we're breaking it up in columns by the type of cancer and then the stages here. So one thing we can do perhaps here is we want to split it up by the name. So we can drag measure names to color. And now we have each bar, we have all these like split up into different colors. Looks a little bit better. It's easier to tell the difference between where like lung to prostate, for example. And it does like spice up the graph a little, make it look a little bit nicer, and gets rid of that monotonous blue. So I think as far as setting up different colors on this looks pretty good. As always, you can pretty much drag anything to color on here, see what it looks like, but I don't know what else we do to get better information out here.
Oh, am I correct in thinking if we dragged the stage name from the tables into color, that would give us the same color scheme as in the other plot?
Let's try it. Yeah. So this has now given it the same as the other plot. Let's just go back to the dashboard. We can visualize. Yeah, and so we have stage 2 is red here, stage 3. So this actually does provide like a really cool illustration of how we switched up this graph. We've essentially rotated these bar graphs to be out just like this. So yeah, honestly, let's keep it just like this. I like the way this one looks.
All right, great. We'll have time for more audience questions at the end, so perhaps we can move on to the second data set.
All right, cool. And thank you for the questions, everybody. All right, so now it's time to move on to our second data set and our final 2 questions. So let's create our worksheet and then load our data source. I'm going to create the sheet first, and then we'll go back and load our source. So the next question we're trying to answer is, what is the cost of breast cancer treatment depending on stage? So there we have our question, and let's just rename our sheet to breast cancer costs. So now we're going to load our breast cancer cost data set, data source. We'll go back to our data source tab over here. First, before we do that, I've noticed that this is not the cleanest name for this one. Let's just rename, you can just double click in here. I'm gonna rename this to just our file name, just so it's a little cleaner. There we go. That shouldn't affect anything in our sheets. It's just renaming the data set, data source, so it's a little clearer. What we'll do to add our next data source is this source drop down here. We'll click here, click on new data source. And again, we're going to be loading from Microsoft Excel. So let's load from Excel the cost set, this one here, breast cancer cost by stage. Click open. And wait for Tableau to pull our data in. There we go. Again, this looks like our Excel. We have broken out by stage. You'll notice there is no question mark set on this cost one. That just was not available in the data for this. So unfortunately, we don't have question mark here. But we still do have it broken up by 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Perfect. So now we have this data set loaded. Let's go back to our worksheet. And we'll see at the top here, we have our 2 different data sets to choose from. We can go from, this is the one we were working with already, which was the number of cases. And now we have our cost, and we have all of our values pulled in here. So our goal here is to answer what is the cost of breast cancer treatment depending on stage. And what we want to do is see separate sections for 0 to 12 months to 12 to 24 months. So what I think we can do is we're going to build a graph very similar to this one here, except we want to have 2 columns for 0 to 12 months and then 1 for 12 to 24 months. And since we're building the same one, I'm going to turn you loose and let you take a stab at it. So I'll give you 5 minutes to try and just create a quick version of this, and then we'll go through and build it together. So go ahead and take a stab at it, and then we'll come back together. There's our timer.
Just so everyone's clear on this, can you just repeat what you expect for people to draw in the plot?
Yeah. So while that's going, our goal is to build a bar graph with 2 to answer this question here: what is the cost of breast cancer treatment depending on stage? And what we want to see is 0 to 12 months and 12 to 24 months in columns, and then the cost by stage on the side, in a similar way to what we have here, where we have total cases, but instead of total cases, we're going to be tracking cost, and we're going to track stage just like this. 12 to 24, 0 to 12 months, and then 12 to 24 months would be how we hope it to come out.
All right, wonderful. Just while the time is ticking down, there's a question about can you just show the process again of adding another data source?
Yeah, of course. I can do that real quick. So step 1, we'll be going to this data source tab. And once we're in here, you can select between your data sources you've loaded up here and view them. But for a new data source, you're going to click right here, click new data source here, this plus icon, and then choose your file. And in this case, we're using our cost data set. So this second one here. This is the second one we loaded.
And I think we'll have time for one more question while the time is ticking. Was how do you decide which of the illnesses was showing in those first graphs? Like, can you filter it out so only some of them are shown?
Yeah, of course. So we would be able to do a filter. We were just including all of them. But say we wanted to create a filter, we don't want to consider colon cancer for whatever reason. Easiest way to do that is down here. You can click on it and just click exclude. And now we don't have there. What you see is this in this filters tab, it's added a filter here. You can click on here, edit filter, and view that we've pulled out colon here. So let's just add it back in this method. And there you go. So if we really wanted to get fancy, we could do some dynamic filtering on the side here. We can right click and hit show filter. And then we'd be able to just select dynamically on here. And you could even pull this into the dashboard if you wanted. But we're not gonna do that right now.
All right. How are we doing with that timer? Are we about ready to move on?
I think we're there.
You can show us how the plot's made.
Yep. So hopefully everyone made some good progress on this. Let's just go over it real quickly, how I would make it. So we're going to drag measure names to the columns. And then we also wanted, oops, I'm on my wrong data set. That's the key, is getting the right data set. So we're gonna drag measure names to the columns and then disease stage as well as the columns because we wanted that by in the columns. And then let's pull in measure values to rows. There we go. This is what we were going for. And let's remove this count column. We don't need that.
So I just have a quick question. So when
Yep.
you use measure values, is that all the numeric columns is then putting in?
Yep,
correct?
that is correct. When I'm referring to measure values, those would be these continuous or these measures here. These values here, and they're all the number values. So that's just an easy way of pulling them to this section here. You can take it out like that and only have one, and then we can add it back. Just add it back like this. There we go. So while I'm going to rename a few of these axes and stuff just to make our graph look good, but I had a question for everyone. I'm noticing an interesting trend here where the cost is increasing for the first year by a stage, but for stage 4 here, this looks like an exception. I'm wondering if anyone has any theories on why that could be, or what can we potentially draw from this data. I'm just calling this total cost here, and there we go.
Do you want us to talk us through what your theories are for why costs go down for the second year with stage 4?
Yeah, so this is a bit of a unfortunate trend we can pull from here, and is that cost in stage 4 is really decreasing and not following a trend, and potentially that can be if you're diagnosed in stage 4, your prognosis is really not as good. So it's unfortunate, but really like illustrates how important it is to improve methods for screening to catch cancer early, and to not like hopefully eliminate these type of diagnoses where you're actually being diagnosed in stage 4. And then last, I'm going to move this to entire view just so it's a little bit looks a little better. And then we'll add this to our dashboard as well later once we've answered our final question. So let's move on to our last question. Let's create a new sheet, and our question here. What was cost by stage? And I'm going to rename this sheet just to total cost for California. So what we want to do is combine our two data sets and link them. At the beginning, we noticed they both were broken up by stage. So we want to take advantage of that so we can do a calculation of total cost. So let's start out by just creating a table. So let's go to our cost data source. So this one here, and let's drag disease stage 2 columns. Now we want to pull in our count sheet, and let's one thing we need to keep in mind, our cost is only for breast cancer, so we can really only look at breast cancer here if we're trying to calculate total cost. So let's drag breast cancer to rows, and we'll see this pop up here. In order to use fields, in order to use fields from both different data sets, a relationship needs to be created with breast cancer cost by stage. So we're just going to follow the instructions on here, select data, edit blend relationships to open the blend relationships dialog box. So we need to link our data together, and the way to do that, described in the pop-up, we'll go here, data, edit blend relationships, and we'll see our data sources here. Just stay in the one here, and we need to click custom, then add, and automatically there will be a mapping from disease stage to stage name. You'll notice the names are slightly different, but Tableau still will match them together. Let's click OK. And immediately we see now our graph is properly representing, has changed to represent that the data is linked. We'll see our link icon right here. Cool. So our goal is to answer what was the cost in California. But we want to look at it and let's pull it together in a table first to get a visualization. So let's click show me and then table. But this isn't quite what we want. So let's go to cost by stage. We're going to take our measure names and move it to rows. And we don't want disease stage and rows anymore. Let's pull that out. Let's pull that out in 1 second. Go to cancer diagnosis. Let's go to cancer diagnosis and drag stage name to columns. And now we can remove disease stage. There we go. And then we're going to go back to our cost by stage. Drag measure values to text here. And there we go. We have a table representing all of this combined. Let's drag out this count. So this is just to help visualize what exactly we've done to get this all together. Here's the cost and the rates, but this isn't exactly useful to us. So we're going to create a calculated field to get the total cost. Let's go to the breast cancer cost data set, which we're already in. We're going to create a calculated field here. And then we're going to combine two of our data sources in the calculated field. Let's call this total cost for CA. Let's drag number of breast cancer cases in here. You see it pulls it in and it's indicating the other data set. And we're trying to calculate total cost. So we're going to multiply this. So this is the number of cases, and we need to multiply by our cost. And let's just do it for 0 to 12 months. Here, and we need to take the sum of this. All right, so this is valid. We'll add that in. So now we have a calculated field for total cost. Let's visualize it. And the best way to do it, we have stage name on columns. Let's drag our total cost field to rows. Remove this. And we have some labels in here we don't want. Let's take the measure values out. And now we have on our left here, we have the total cost for each individual stage. You see that this isn't exactly. See here, it's 13 billion for stage 1 and 2, and 3 billion for stage 3, 1.3 for stage 4. And let's just drag this onto the label so it's easy to see right on there without hovering. Move to the entire view. So now we have the total cost in California for each individual stage. And there we go. So finally, let's just add these last two questions to our dashboard. Easy to drag these in. Let's put them here. And total cost for California. So now we have a central place to answer all of our questions. We can see the total cost by stage. We can see what is the cost depending on stage. We can see what types of cancer are most prevalent and what stage most diagnoses happen. So yeah, that's all the visualizations I had prepared. Hopefully they do a decent job of answering our questions. Obviously we could go in and color code these and improve them, but we're running out of time. So let's move on to the final question and answer.
All right, brilliant. Thank you very much, Connor. I have to say, the thing about how most cancers get diagnosed at stage 1 or 2, but then lung cancer is much later. That's really interesting. It sort of really shows the effect of like screening programs in there for some types of cancer, but not others. All right, so we have a few more questions from the audience. One of the questions is, can you just go over about how you go about linking the two data sets again? That was kind of the crux to those last plots.
Yep, and linking data sets is one of the harder things we're doing here, so happy to go over it. So what I did to prompt the linking of the two data sources was drag a field from each set onto our page, and then it gave me a message. I can't really work with this data unless I link them, unless I tell Tableau how those data sets can be linked. We know from examining our data in the beginning that they are linked, they could be linked based off stage name. They have similar values. So we're able to go up into this data tab and then create a blend relationship. So we go to edit blend relationships, and we were able to create a custom relationship linking disease stage to disease name. I did that by clicking this add screen here, and Tableau was smart enough to know that like the values in here, the field names were similar, so we're able to just select from the list, pick that, and then link together here. And like after linking, we had to do some work with the data to really create a calculated field of what our answer could be, just because like essentially adding cost to the rows doesn't make a lot of sense for our question, and we just needed to create a calculated field.
Okay, wonderful. And there's one question about if you want to, your own color scheme, how do you change the palettes?
How do you change the palettes? Yeah, so let's take a look. Let's go back to our first one, a lot of color here. You're able to change palette color by going into color in your marks card. Find your marks card, go into color, edit colors, and you can select from a ton of different palettes in here. Get really fancy with it and change things like opacity, even add borders, things like that. So you can really make it look good if you have some more time to play around with those.
All right, wonderful. Well, we're at time now, so Satya, thank you once again, Connor. That was a really nice presentation. Yeah, really interesting to just get to see a whole dashboard made in a pretty short amount of time. Thank you also to Adi for moderating. Thank you to everyone who asked a question. Thank you to everyone who showed up. We have more Tableau training coming next Tuesday. Make sure you register for that. And there's another session, I believe, next Wednesday on how to become a business analyst. So if you're interested in dashboard creation and that sort of thing as a career, then please do register again for that one. So that's at datacamp.com/webinars. I will see you all in future sessions. Have a nice day and goodbye.
For each individual stage, you see that this isn't exactly. See here, it's 13 billion for stage 1 and 2, and 3 billion for stage 3, 1.3 for stage 4. And let's just drag this onto the label so it's easy to see right on there without hovering. Move to the entire view. So now we have the total cost in California for each individual stage. And there we go. So finally, let's just add these last 2 questions to our dashboard. Easy to drag these in. Let's put them here. And total cost for California. So now we have a central place to answer all of our questions. We can see the total cost by stage. We can see what is the cost depending on stage. We can see what types of cancer are most prevalent and what stage most diagnoses happen. So yeah, that's all the visualizations I had prepared. Hopefully they do a decent job of answering our questions. Obviously, we could go in and color code these and improve them, but we're running out of time, so let's move on to the final question and answer.
All right, brilliant. Thank you very much, Connor. I have to say, the thing about how most cancers get diagnosed at stage 1 or 2, but then lung cancer is much later. That's really interesting. It sort of really shows the effect of like screening programs in there for some types of cancer, but not others. All right, so we have a few more questions from the audience. one of the questions is, can you just go over about how you go about linking the two data sets again? That was kind of the crux to those last plots.
Yep, and linking data sets is one of the harder things we're doing here, so happy to go over it. So what I did to prompt the linking of the two data sources was drag a field from each set onto our page, and then it gave me a message: I can't really work with this data unless I link them, unless I tell Tableau how those data sets can be linked. We know from examining our data in the beginning that they are linked, they could be linked based off stage name. They have similar values. So we're able to go up into this data tab and then create a blend relationship. So we go to edit blend relationships, and we were able to create a custom relationship linking disease stage to disease name. I did that by clicking this add screen here. And Tableau is smart enough to know that like the values in here, the field names were similar. So we're able to just select from the list, pick that, and then link together here. And like after linking, we had to do some work with the data to really create a calculated field of what our answer could be. Just because like essentially adding cost to the rows doesn't make a lot of sense for our question, and we just needed to create a calculated field.
Okay, wonderful. And there's one question about how, if you want your own color scheme, how do you change the palettes?
How do you change the palettes? Yeah, so let's take a look. Let's go back to our first one, a lot of color here. You're able to change palette color by going into color in your marks card. Find your marks card, go into color, edit colors, and you can select from a ton of different palettes in here. Get really fancy with it and change things like opacity, even add borders, things like that. So you can really make it look good if you have some more time to play around with those.
All right, wonderful. Well, we're at time now, so Satya, thank you once again, Connor. That was a really nice presentation. Yeah, really interesting to just get to see a whole dashboard made in a pretty short amount of time. Thank you also to Adi for moderating. Thank you to everyone who asked a question. Thank you to everyone who showed up. We have more Tableau training coming next Tuesday. Make sure you register for that. And there's another session, I believe, next Wednesday on how to become a business analyst. So if you're interested in dashboard creation and that sort of thing as a career, then please do register again for that one. So that's at datacamp.com/webinars. I will see you all in future sessions. Have a nice day and goodbye.